A man's worth isn't in his bank account. It's in how he treats those he thinks are beneath him. Julian Davenport, a billionaire with a Patek Philippe on his wrist and ice in his veins, was about to learn this lesson. He was sitting in New York's most exclusive restaurant, waiting to close the biggest deal of his life. The only person he noticed was his waitress, a young woman he dismissed with a cruel word. He thought she was nobody. He thought she couldn't understand his insults. He was wrong on both counts, and that single mistake was about to cost him everything. The Caspian Room was not a restaurant. It was a statement, perched 70 floors above Central Park. Its windows were vast panes of crystal that framed the Manhattan skyline like a living work of art. The air wasn't just air. It was filtered, chilled, and scented with a faint, impossibly expensive blend of white truffle and old money. Getting a reservation required a 3-month wait or a net worth in the 10-figure range. Julian Davenport had both. He checked his watch. A Patek Philippe 5711, the blue dial Nautilus that cost more than a suburban house, for the third time in 5 minutes. 7:02 p.m. He was impatient. "Where is this water?" he snapped, not looking up from his phone as a server approached. "Right here, sir." The voice was soft, professional. He glanced up, his eyes sweeping over her with the same casual disdain he reserved for slow-moving traffic. She was young, perhaps mid-20s. Her uniform was a simple, starched white blouse and a black apron. Her black hair was pulled back in a severe, functional bun. She was, in Julian's world, invisible furniture. Ava, her name tag read. He'd already forgotten it. "And my guest Arthur will be here shortly. See that his glass is filled immediately," Julian ordered, already dismissing her. "Of course, sir." Ava moved with an efficiency that was almost silent. She filled his water glass, her hand steady, her expression neutral. Julian watched her reflection in the dark window. He despised weakness, and in his eyes, service was weakness. It was the lot of people who hadn't been smart enough, ruthless enough, or lucky enough to be him. He was here tonight to be anything but weak. Davenport Holdings, the empire his grandfather had built on steel, and his father had expanded with real estate, was bleeding. A series of bad investments and hostile takeovers had left the company dangerously over-leveraged. The press didn't know it yet, but Wall Street was beginning to whisper. Julian needed a lifeline. That lifeline was Shen Tech, a multi-trillion-dollar Chinese conglomerate. Shen Tech was looking to partner with an established American firm for its new Green City infrastructure project. The deal was worth $50 billion over 10 years. It wasn't just a lifeline, it was a new empire. And Julian was about to meet its gatekeeper, a man named Marcus Chen, the legendary head of Shen Tech's international operations. Julian's associate, Arthur Hamilton, slid into the seat opposite him. Arthur was softer than Julian, a man who'd inherited wealth, but not the killer instinct. "Julian, sorry I'm late. Traffic was hell," Arthur puffed, adjusting his brioni tie. "He's not here yet," Julian said, his voice tight. "This is typical. Make you wait. Power play." "Julian, be nice," Arthur cautioned, nodding politely to Ava as she filled his glass. "These are sensitive negotiations, cultural nuances." Julian scoffed. "Cultural nuances? Arthur, money is the only culture. It's the only language. You're too soft. You have to show them who's boss. You let them know your time is valuable." Ava placed 2 leather-bound menus on the table. "Can I offer you gentlemen an aperitif while you wait?" Julian didn't even look at her. He waved a dismissive hand. "No, just wait. Over there. We're talking business." Ava's expression didn't flicker. "Very good, sir." She retreated to her station, standing perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back. "See?" Julian muttered to Arthur. "They're just background. They're paid to be invisible. She's just doing her job, Julian." "It's not a job, Arthur. It's a stopgap. It's what people do when they have no ambition." Julian's phone buzzed. An email from his assistant. "Mr. Chen is running 15 minutes late." His apologies. "Unbelievable," Julian hissed, tossing the phone onto the damask tablecloth. 15 minutes. He's testing me, trying to see if I'll wait like a supplicant." "Or," Arthur offered reasonably, "he's a busy man running a global empire and he's 15 minutes late." "Same thing," Julian snapped. "It's all part of the game. This whole deal, it's a headache. I have to smile and nod and pretend I care about their 1,000-year-old philosophies. It's business. We build the thing. We get paid. What's so complicated?" He looked up, catching Ava's eye from across the room. She was watching, her gaze impassive. It annoyed him. He felt like he was being observed. "I hate this," Julian said, louder than he intended. "I hate having to bow and scrape to these Shanghai execs. They come over here, buy up our real estate, and expect us to kowtow to them." "Julian!" Arthur hissed, looking around. The tables were far apart, but Julian's voice was carrying. "Keep your voice down. This deal is everything." "I know it's everything, Arthur. That's why I'm annoyed. I should be dictating terms, not them." He took a long sip of water and motioned angrily for Ava. She was at his side in an instant. "Sir?" "More bread," he said, tapping the empty basket. "And smile, sweetie. It's not that hard. My compliments on the restaurant's scenery." His words were a greasy smear in the refined air. Arthur visibly cringed. Ava's face remained a mask of professional calm, but her eyes, for just a fraction of a second, hardened. "Right away, sir," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. She took the basket and walked away. "You're a pig, Julian," Arthur said. "I'm a customer, Arthur, a very high-paying one. She's here to serve. If she doesn't like it, she can go get an MBA." "Oh, wait." Julian leaned in, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "That's the problem, isn't it? They come here. They take jobs like this. They don't even speak the language. I bet she wouldn't understand a word of high finance if it hit her in the face. Just nods and smiles." He was warming to his theme, his arrogance inflating to fill the space left by his anxiety. He was performing for Arthur, for himself, for the invisible judges in his head. "It's probably the same with these Shen Tech guys," he continued, his voice a low, conspiratorial drawl. "I'll have to use small words, draw pictures, probably need everything explained in... well..." He stopped. He looked directly at Ava, who was returning with the bread. He put on a mocking, sing-song, stereotypical Chinese accent. "Viewy, simple. You understand? Simple." He made a small, bowing motion with his head, his eyes glinting with malice. The restaurant, which had been a low hum of civilized conversation and silver clinking on porcelain, fell utterly silent. Arthur looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. The couple at the next table, a tech mogul and his wife, stared in open-mouthed horror. Julian Davenport, basking in the shock, leaned back in his chair. He had established dominance. He was the lion. Ava placed the bread basket on the table. The only sound was the faint click of the silver basket meeting the linen. She did not move. She did not smile. She stood straight, her spine like a steel rod, and looked Julian Davenport directly in the eye. The silence in the Caspian room stretched. It was no longer a comfortable, wealthy silence. It was a tight, agonizing void. Julian's smirk began to feel stiff on his face. He hadn't expected the entire room to stop. He had expected Arthur to laugh nervously and the waitress to scurry away in humiliation. But Ava Chen didn't scurry. She held his gaze. Julian, who had intimidated corporate raiders and hostile board members, suddenly felt a strange, cold prickle on the back of his neck. Her eyes were not angry. They were not hurt. They were analytical. It was the look of a scientist studying an insect just before pinning it to a board. "Is there a problem?" Julian finally said, his voice hard, trying to reclaim the momentum. Ava tilted her head, a small, clinical gesture. And then she spoke. Her voice was clear, crisp, and cut through the silence like a diamond blade. She did not speak in the broken English he had mocked. She did not speak in the servile tone of a waitress. She spoke in flawless, aristocratic Mandarin. The sound of it was jarring in the New York restaurant. It was a language Julian associated with his translators, with grainy conference calls to Shanghai. To hear it come from her, delivered with such icy, perfect precision, was a physical shock. Julian and Arthur stared, uncomprehending. The tech mogul at the next table, who did business in Asia, let out a small, quiet, "Oh, damn." Ava spoke for perhaps 30 seconds. Her tone was level, conversational, but her eyes never left Julian's. The words were meaningless to him, but the intent was unmistakable. This was not an apology. It was a judgment. When she finished, a small, mirthless smile touched the corner of her mouth. She paused, letting the foreign syllables hang in the air, then switched back to the same perfect, unaccented English she had used before. She provided the translation. "I said, Mr. Davenport," she began, her voice dangerously calm, "that your assumptions are as poorly constructed as your company's balance sheet." Julian's blood ran cold. What did she just say? Arthur, who had been white as a sheet, turned a sickly shade of green. "I continued," Ava went on, as if reciting a report, "that the Shanghai executives you so crudely mock, the ones you believe require small words, just closed a $50 billion joint venture with Airbus this morning. They are concerned about your ability to grasp complex Western business concepts, given that Davenport Holdings is currently leveraged at 3i1 with a negative cash flow trend for 3 consecutive quarters. They find your position problematic." Julian couldn't breathe. It felt as if the air had been vacuumed from his lungs. This wasn't a waitress. This was... How? "You," he stammered, his mind racing. You looked up my company? Who the hell are you?" "I'm the person who's been analyzing your quarterly reports for the last 6 weeks," Ava said. "I am the one who flagged your debt-to-equity ratio as a high-risk liability. I'm the one who knows you filed for a secret extension on your revolving credit line with JP Morgan Chase 2 weeks ago, a fact you failed to disclose in your preliminary partnership briefing." She took a small, sharp breath. "And I am the person who recommended to my father that he take this meeting with you, against my better judgment." Julian's world tilted. Your father. My apologies," Ava said. She reached up and, with a single, fluid motion, untied her black apron. She folded it neatly and placed it on the empty chair at the end of their table. Underneath, she was not wearing a simple white blouse. She was wearing a pearl-grey silk shell, the kind that costs $800 and is invisible to anyone who doesn't know. "My name is Ava Chen. I am the Vice President of International Strategy for Shen Tech." Julian Davenport's face, which had been pale, flushed a violent, dark red. The blood pounded in his ears. "No," he whispered. "It was impossible." "Yes," she said. "And the man you are waiting for, Mr. Marcus Chen, he is my father. He asked me to meet you here, to vet you, I believe was your word. He was never running late." He is, in fact, dining at Daniel tonight, with the CEO of Siemens. The humiliation was a physical force, pressing Julian down into the expensive leather of his chair. Every eye in the room was on him. He saw it all now. The pity, the disgust, the schadenfreude. "Wait," Arthur croaked, finding his voice. "Ms. Chen, he had no idea." Ava's gaze shifted to Arthur. It softened, but only fractionally. "You, Mr. Hamilton, seemed uncomfortable. That's noted. You, Mr. Davenport, seemed entirely too comfortable. That is also noted." Julian shot up from his chair, his mind a frantic scramble. "Listen, Ms. Chen, Ava, it was a joke. A stupid, tasteless joke. Business banter. I was stressed. The deal." "The deal?" Ava's voice was now pure ice. "You seem to be under the impression there is still a deal." She turned from their table and began to walk away. "Wait!" Julian shouted, his voice cracking. "You can't. This is entrapment. You lied to me. You were pretending." Ava stopped. She turned back slowly, her composure absolute. She walked back until she was standing directly in front of him. "I never lied, Mr. Davenport. You asked me for water. You asked me for bread. I am an employee of this restaurant group. Did you ask my name? Did you ask me anything about myself? No. You told me who I was. You told me I was a nobody. You told me I was scenery. You told me I was a simple woman who couldn't understand your complex world." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "You were not entrapped, Julian. You were observed. My father believes that you can judge a man's character not by how he treats his equals, but by how he treats the person he believes is his inferior. Tonight you showed me your character, and as a result, the Shen Tech Davenport partnership proposal is officially rejected, effective immediately." "You can't do that!" Julian snarled, his desperation turning to rage. "Your father makes all final decisions based on my recommendations, and my recommendation is that you are a liability. Your cultural ignorance is appalling, but your business recklessness is worse. You insult people you depend on. You are a bad investment." The restaurant manager, a tall Frenchman named Mr. Dubois, suddenly appeared at her side. He had clearly been waiting for his cue. "Is everything all right, Ms. Chen?" he asked, completely ignoring Julian. "Everything is fine, Mr. Dubois. Thank you for your hospitality these past few weeks," Ava said, her professional warmth returning. "Mr. Davenport and his guest will be leaving now. Please send their bill to his table. They will not be staying for dinner." "No!" Julian yelled. "We are staying. I have a reservation." Mr. Dubois looked at Julian as if he were something he'd scraped off his shoe. "Sir, your presence is no longer required. Please do not make this more unpleasant than it already is." Two security guards, dressed in sharp suits that did nothing to hide their bulk, materialized by the restaurant's entrance. Julian looked at Ava, his eyes pleading. "Please, my company. Thousands of jobs. You should have thought of those jobs before you spoke," Ava said, her voice flat. "Your arrogance just bankrupted them. Good evening, Mr. Davenport." She turned and walked, not toward the kitchens, but toward the front entrance, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor. Mr. Dubois handed Julian a small, leather-bound folder with the bill. Julian's hand was shaking so badly he couldn't even take it. His empire, his lifeline, his future, all of it, gone. Destroyed by a nobody in a waitress apron. The instant regret was so profound, it was paralyzing. He had just made the worst mistake of his life, and the consequences were only beginning. The walk out of the Caspian room was the longest of Julian Davenport's life. Every diner, every captain, every busboy. They all watched. Their eyes were not sympathetic. They were cold, curious, and contemptuous. He felt naked. His Brioni suit felt like a cheap costume. His Patek Philippe, a useless, heavy shackle on his wrist. Arthur, muttering, I'm ruined, scrambled behind him. When they reached the private elevator, Julian slammed his fist against the mahogany-panelled wall. She set me up! That witch! She set me up! She didn't set you up, Julian. Arthur rounded on him, his face pale with a mixture of fear and fury. She gave you water. You did this. You couldn't just keep your mouth shut for 1 hour. You had to be the big, tough billionaire. You had to mock her. She was a waitress, Julian roared, the elevator doors sliding shut, encasing them in a suffocating mirrored box. She was a test, and you failed. You failed for both of us. Arthur's voice was shaking. My firm was underwriting half the bonds for this deal. Do you know what this does to me? To my reputation? Your reputation? Julian sneered, his panic twisting into venom. You sat there. You didn't stop me. I tried. I told you to be nice. I told you to keep your voice down. But you always know better, don't you, Julian? You always have to be the alpha. Well, congratulations. You're the alpha of a sinking ship. The elevator doors opened to the pristine, silent lobby. The concierge, who had greeted Julian with a reverent Mr. Davenport an hour earlier, now stared resolutely at his computer screen, refusing to meet his eye. The humiliation was absolute. Julian stumbled out onto the sidewalk at Columbus Circle. The New York night air, usually vibrant, felt cold and hostile. He pulled out his phone, his thumb trembling as he dialed his lawyer. David, we have a problem. A big problem. 2 days later, the news broke. It wasn't a quiet rumor. It was a cannon shot. A single devastating headline from Bloomberg Terminal. Shentech pulls out of 50B Davenport partnership talks. Sources cite lack of confidence in leadership. The bottom fell out. Davenport Holdings stock, already fragile, didn't just drop, it plummeted. It fell 60% in the first hour of trading. The phones in Julian's office were a screaming chorus of margin calls and panicked investors. His board, the old, comfortable men who had sat by while Julian ran the company with arrogant impunity, suddenly found their spines. They called an emergency meeting. "Julian, what is this?" demanded a board member named Peterson, a man who had known Julian since he was in diapers. "What does lack of confidence mean? We sent them our best projections." "It was a cultural misunderstanding," Julian stammered, his tie strangling him. He hadn't slept in 48 hours. A misunderstanding? Julian, a $50 billion deal doesn't collapse over a misunderstanding. What did you do? Julian couldn't tell them. He couldn't say, "I insulted the VP of the company because I thought she was a waitress." It sounded insane. It was insane. "It's being handled," he lied. "I'm reaching out to Marcus Chen personally." But Marcus Chen was a ghost. He didn't take Julian's calls. His emails, routed through a phalanx of assistants, received a single, curt reply. "Mr. Chen considers the matter closed." Julian tried to find Ava Chen. He searched LinkedIn, but her profile was locked down. He sent a frantic, rambling, apologetic email to the only address he could find. It bounced back. User not found. She had erased herself. The banks, which had been patient with Davenport Holdings' debt, were no longer patient. With the Shentech deal dead, the company's future projections were worthless. The loans were called in. Julian was trapped. He was forced to begin liquidating assets to cover the immediate debts. First went the company art collection, a Picasso, a Rothko. Then went the subsidiary divisions, the shipping arm, the logistics branch. He was selling off the limbs of his empire to keep the heart beating, but he was bleeding out faster than he could patch the wounds. His friends, the other billionaires and hedge fund managers he saw at galas, suddenly stopped returning his texts. He was no longer a lion, he was a carcass, and the jackals were circling. One evening, a week after the incident, Julian sat alone in his vast, empty penthouse. The lights of Central Park glittered below, but they felt like mocking eyes. He poured a glass of Macallan 25, the amber liquid doing nothing to warm the ice in his stomach. He turned on the TV, hoping for a distraction. A financial news program was on. The fallout from the Davenport collapse continues to shock Wall Street, the anchorwoman said, her expression grave. But in a stunning reversal, Shen Tech announced today it has not pulled its Green City project from the US. In fact, it has found a new partner. Julian sat up, the glass freezing halfway to his lips. Shen Tech will be partnering with Hamilton Strategic, the smaller, more agile advisory firm led by Arthur Hamilton. Julian stared. Arthur. The screen cut to a press conference. There was Arthur, his face beaming, standing next to a serene, powerful-looking Asian man. The chyron read, Marcus Chen, CEO, Shen Tech International. We are thrilled, Arthur was saying, to partner with Shen Tech. We believe in a future built on mutual respect, transparency, and a deep understanding of our partners' values. The anchorwoman returned. Sources say Mr. Hamilton, who was peripherally involved in the initial Davenport negotiations, proactively reached out to Shen Tech following the deal's collapse. He reportedly presented a new proposal that was both more financially sound and culturally aligned with Shen Tech's vision. A source close to the deal told us, Mr. Hamilton apologized for what he called a deeply regrettable display of American arrogance he had witnessed and promised a partnership of true equality. Julian hurled his glass at the television. The Macallan splashed across the screen, dripping over Arthur's triumphant, traitorous face. The glass shattered, the sound echoing in the massive, empty room. Arthur hadn't just survived the incident, he had profited from it. He had used Julian's failure as his own springboard. He had taken Julian's lifeline and claimed it for himself. The regret Julian had felt in the restaurant was a dull ache. This new regret was a white-hot, stabbing agony. It wasn't just the money, it wasn't just the company, it was the humiliation, it was the complete and total outmaneuvering by everyone, by Arthur, by Marcus Chen, and most of all, by her. He could still see her face, calm and analytical. Your assumptions are as poorly constructed as your company's balance sheet. She hadn't just insulted him. She had read his eulogy. To understand the blade, you must first understand the forge. Ava Chen was not forged in the boardrooms of Shanghai. She was forged in the fire of her father's expectations. Marcus Chen was a man who straddled two worlds. He was a titan of Chinese industry, but he had earned his MBA at Harvard in the 1980s. He believed in Western efficiency, but he lived by an Eastern philosophy. His favorite phrase, one he had drilled into Ava since she was a child, was Shijian, practice. You cannot know a thing, Ava, until you do it, he would say, quizzing her on her textbooks. You cannot understand a market until you touch it. A report is an echo. The work is the sound. Ava was brilliant. First in her class at MIT, a dual degree in finance and engineering. She could build a financial model that would make a Wall Street quant weep. She spoke 4 languages. She was, by any measure, a prodigy. And her father, upon her graduation, had her assigned to a factory floor in Guangzhou, inspecting microchips for 6 months. She had protested. "Father, this is beneath me. I should be in strategy." You will be, he had replied, not unkindly. But first, you will understand what it is you are strategizing about. You will understand the woman whose hands build the products you wish to sell. Until you do, you are just a girl with a calculator. She had hated it. The repetition, the long hours, the feeling of being invisible. But she had learned. She learned about supply chains, about quality control, about the tiny frustrations and large hopes of the women she worked with. When she finally did join the strategy department, her insights were not theoretical. They were real. Now Shen Tech was making its biggest ever push into the United States. The Green City project was the flagship, and Marcus had tapped Ava to lead the new American hospitality division. "I am buying 3 hotel chains, Ava," he told her in his office in Shanghai. "I want them to be the new standard for luxury, blending Eastern service with Western efficiency. You will oversee this." "I am ready," she said. "Almost." He steepled his fingers. "You understand finance. You understand engineering. You do not understand American service. You do not understand the American worker. You are going to New York, but you will not be going as Ava Chen, VP." Her heart sank. "Father." "No. Not again. Yes, the Dubois Group is our partner. They own the Caspian Room, a place of extreme standards. You will work there, as a waitress, for 1 month. You will see the customers. You will be the person you will one day manage. You will learn the sound, Ava, not the echo." And so she had. For 3 weeks, Ava Chen, the heiress to billions, had tied on an apron. She had learned to carry a tray, to memorize the wine list, to smile when a hedge fund manager's wife complained that her water was too wet. She learned about sore feet. She learned about the casual cruelty of people who, like Julian Davenport, saw her as furniture. She learned about the quiet dignity of her fellow staff, the other waiters, the bus boys, the chefs. She learned about Leo, the kind senior waiter who showed her how to properly decant a bottle of 1982 Petrus and shared his tips when she had a bad night. "You get used to the rich ones, Ava," Leo had told her one night while polishing glasses. "The new money ones are the worst. They think being rude to us proves they're important. The real money, the old school ones, they know your name. They ask about your family. They know respect is the real currency." Then came the Davenport file. Her father had sent it to her. "This man wants our partnership," his email read. "His numbers are aggressive. He is all Western ambition. He is coming to the Caspian Room to meet you. But he will not know he is meeting you. He will think he is meeting a waiter. You will serve him, and then you will tell me if he is a man we can build a city with." It was a test for Julian Davenport, and a final exam for Ava Chen. She had read the file. She saw the debt, the high-risk leverage, the personality profile that screamed narcissist. She had already decided he was a bad bet. But she had underestimated the depth of his awfulness. She had expected him to be dismissive. She had not expected the mocking accent. She had not expected the base-level, unadulterated racism. When he made that bowing motion, something inside her snapped. It wasn't just an insult to her. It was an insult to the women on the factory floor, to her father, to Leo, to 1,000 years of her heritage. And as she stood there, the Mandarin she reserved for her family and the highest-level board meetings came to her lips. It was not a choice. It was a reaction. She was no longer a waitress. She was Ava Chen, VP of Shen Tech, and she was about to terminate his contract. After she walked out of the restaurant, leaving Julian a sputtering, ruined man, she got into a black car waiting for her. She kicked off the simple, flat, waitress shoes. Her feet ached. She called her father. It was morning in Shanghai. "Father," she said, her voice tired. "Ava, how did the vetting of Mr. Davenport go?" His voice was calm. "He failed, spectacularly." There was a long pause. She heard him take a sip of tea. "I expected as much," Marcus said. "His proposal was built on ego, not on fundamentals. But I needed you to see his character for yourself." "He was a pig," Ava said, rubbing her temples. "He is a small man, Ava, and small men cannot build great things. A man who kicks down will never know how to build up. You see now, the numbers on his report and the cruelty in his heart. They are the same thing. They are both symptoms of a man who takes foolish risks and respects nothing. You did well. The lesson is over. So, what now? Now, we find a new partner. Someone who understands. In the meantime, the car is taking you to the airport. Get on the company jet. You're coming home. Your work as a strategist begins tomorrow." "Father," Ava said, a small smile playing on her lips, "I have an idea. There was another man at the table, Arthur Hamilton. He was weak, but he was ashamed. He's not a lion, but he might make a good partner. He knows he's not the alpha. He might be willing to... Listen." Marcus Chen laughed, a rare, warm sound. "Good. Very good. You didn't just see the problem, you found the solution. That's my daughter. That is Shi Jian." Julian Davenport's world was no longer measured in weeks or days. It was measured in the frantic, agonizing hours between bank notifications. He had thought the nightmare had peaked when Arthur Hamilton snatched the Shen Tech deal. He was wrong. The nightmare had just begun. A lack of confidence statement from a giant like Shen Tech wasn't just an opinion. It was a death sentence. It was blood in the water. Every other creditor, every partner, every investor who had been willing to give Julian the benefit of the doubt now panicked. It was a bank run, but on his entire corporate identity. "Julian, it's Peterson." The board member's voice on the phone was no longer angry, it was funereal. "We're being sued. A class action lawsuit from the shareholders. They're claiming gross mismanagement and executive negligence." "Negligence!" Julian bellowed, pacing his stark office. The Picasso was gone, leaving a pale rectangle on the wall. The market turned." "The market didn't turn, Julian. The market was pushed by you. What happened in that restaurant? The rumors are insane. They're saying you assaulted a staff member." "No, I made a joke. It was a joke. A $50 billion joke, Julian. No one is laughing. The board is voting. We're invoking the morality clause in your contract." "The morality clause? That's for felons, for degenerates. It's for any executive who brings the company into disrepute. And Julian, you are the poster child for disrepute right now. We're voting to oust you as CEO." The phone clicked. He was gone. Julian stared at the receiver. Ousted. From his own company. His grandfather's company. The rage was so profound it made him dizzy. He swept a stack of files off his desk. They scattered across the expensive carpet like dead leaves. He was locked out. His keycard to the executive suite was deactivated. His corporate accounts were frozen. He was, in an instant, a pariah. The press, which had once fawned over his Midas touch, now tore him to shreds. The New York Post ran a front-page story with a grainy cell phone picture of him being escorted out of the Caspian room. The headline, "Billionaire Bully Gets Served." He became a joke. Late-night hosts made cracks about him. Julian Davenport walked into a restaurant and ordered the consequences. They're not to his liking. He hid in his penthouse, but there was no escape. The building's co-op board, composed of the same people he used to sneer at in the elevator, held an emergency meeting. He was respectfully asked to sell his apartment, as his notoriety was negatively impacting the building's prestige. He was being evicted by billionaires. His personal life crumbled next. His fiancée, a model who had loved his Amex card more than him, saw the writing on the wall. She left. Her text message was brutally simple. "I can't be associated with this, Julian. My brand is suffering." She took the ring, the car, and the dog. Julian was alone. The money was disappearing, eaten alive by lawyers and creditors. The Davenport Holdings empire was being carved up and sold for parts in a bankruptcy auction. His name, once a synonym for power, was now a warning. One rainy afternoon, Julian found himself walking in the city. He had no destination. He was just walking. His $8,000 Brioni suit was rumpled. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. He looked like just another defeated man on the streets of New York. He found himself outside the Caspian Room. He looked up at the glittering tower. He thought about going up, about screaming at them, about demanding to see her. But he knew the security guards would just throw him out. He turned and walked into a simple, working-class diner on 10th Avenue, the kind of place he would have burned down before being seen in. The smell of stale coffee and frying onions hit him. He sat in a cracked vinyl booth. A waitress, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with a name tag that said Brenda, came over. "What'll it be, hon?" she asked, her voice gravelly. Julian looked at her. He saw her sore feet. He saw her exhaustion. He saw a human being. Just a coffee, please," he said. His voice was hoarse. "You got it," she said, and shuffled away. He watched her pour the coffee. He watched her kindness to the man at the counter. He watched her work. And for the first time in his life, Julian Davenport felt a sliver of something other than rage or regret. He felt shame. He had had it all: power, respect, a legacy, and he had traded it all for one moment of cheap, cruel pleasure. He had destroyed himself because he couldn't stand the sight of a simple waitress. The regret wasn't just for the money. It was for the waste of his potential, his legacy, his soul. He had been weighed and measured in that restaurant, and he had been found wanting. While Julian's world imploded, Ava's was being built. She returned to Shanghai, not as an apprentice, but as a proven leader. Her father had her report on the Davenport incident, not to him, but to the entire executive board of Shen Tech. The boardroom was a vast, intimidating space of glass and steel overlooking the Huangpu River. The board members were old, powerful men, many of them loyal to her father for decades. They were skeptical of this young woman, this American-educated girl. Ava stood at the head of the table. She did not use a PowerPoint. She did not use notes. She just spoke. "Julian Davenport was not a person," she began, her voice ringing with clarity. "He was a system of arrogance, debt, and disrespect. He believed his name made him invincible. He believed our need for his American partnership made us desperate. He was wrong." She laid out the financial case. His company was a house of cards. His leadership was a liability. To partner with him would have been to chain ourselves to a sinking anchor. Then she laid out the human case. He failed the simplest test of all, the test of character. He insulted our heritage, but more importantly, he insulted his own people, the people who serve him. A man who does not respect the foundation cannot be trusted to build the skyscraper. She pivoted. "This is why I rejected him, and this is why I have chosen Arthur Hamilton." A picture of Arthur appeared on the screen behind her. Mr. Hamilton is not a lion, but we do not need a lion. We have our own. We need a partner. Mr. Hamilton knows he is not the smartest man in the room. This makes him wise. He knows he needs us. This makes him loyal. He was horrified by Mr. Davenport's behavior. This makes him decent. She presented her new proposal, a partnership with Hamilton Strategic, with Shen Tech holding a majority stake. A cleaner, safer, more profitable venture. When she finished, there was silence. Then, one of the oldest board members, a man named Uncle Brian, nodded slowly. She has her father's mind, he said in Mandarin. But she has her own eyes. She did not just see the insult. She saw the opportunity. I approve. One by one, they all voted yes. The Green City project, rebranded and streamlined, went forward at lightning speed. Ava was in charge. She was relentless. She worked 18-hour days, flying between New York and Shanghai. She was in her element. But the 1-month stint as a waitress had changed her. She visited the new construction sites, and she didn't just talk to the engineers. She talked to the construction workers. She ate lunch with them. She learned their names. When she designed the new hotels, she didn't just focus on the thread count of the sheets. She focused on the staff. She designed better break rooms. She implemented a profit-sharing program. She insisted on a respect-first training mandate for all managers. One of her first hires was Leo, the kind waiter from the Caspian Room. She made him the director of service for her entire North American chain. He cried when she offered him the job. But Ms. Chen, why me? Because, Leo, she said, you taught me that respect is the real currency. I can't think of anyone better to manage my bank. Her father watched her from a distance. He saw the company's profits soar, but he saw something more. He saw a leader who was not just respected, but liked. She was not just building a company. She was building a community. One evening, Marcus found her on the rooftop terrace of their new flagship New York hotel. She was looking out over the skyline. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "I've always thought so," he replied. "I used to look at this skyline and just see buildings," Ava said. "I saw assets, portfolios, numbers. But after that month, I see the people inside. I see the Leos and the Brendas, the people holding it all up." "You have learned the lesson, Ava," Marcus said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The sound, not the echo." "What about Davenport?" she asked quietly. "I saw his company went into receivership." "Yes, he lost everything," Marcus said simply. "A tragedy, but one of his own making." "Do you think he learned anything?" Marcus Chen looked out at the city lights. "I hope so. But it is not our concern. Our concern is to build things that last. And arrogance never lasts." 2 years passed. The name Julian Davenport was a forgotten footnote in the archives of financial news. The world had moved on. The Davenport Holdings building was now the Shen Tech Hamilton Tower, a gleaming beacon of new, global commerce. Ava's hotel chain was the most successful luxury launch in a decade. Arthur Hamilton, rich beyond his wildest dreams and eternally grateful to Ava, was her most loyal and effective partner. Ava Chen was one of the most powerful women in international business. She was profiled in Forbes, not as an heiress, but as a visionary. One cold January evening, Ava was in New York for a gala. A snowstorm had gridlocked the city. After the event, her driver was struggling to get through the snarled traffic of Midtown. "I'm sorry, Ms. Chen. This is going to be hours," the driver said. "It's fine, Robert," Ava said. "Pull over here. I'm only a dozen blocks from the hotel. I'll walk. I need the air." "Miss Chen, I can't let you—" "I'll be fine," she smiled. "I know how to handle myself." She stepped out of the Maybach, her couture gown hidden under a warm cashmere coat. The snow was falling in thick, soft flakes. The city was muffled and beautiful. She walked, enjoying the rare moment of anonymity. Her route took her down 10th Avenue. The street was deserted. The wind whipped at her coat, and she pulled it tighter. She passed a small 24-hour diner, its neon coffee sign cutting through the snow. She glanced inside, and she froze. In a booth, nursing a single cup of coffee, sat a man. He was older, or at least he looked it. His hair was streaked with grey. He wore a thin, worn-out jacket. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. But it was him, Julian Davenport. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a lion. He was just a ghost. Ava stood in the snow, watching him through the window. A part of her, the part that still remembered the sting of his words, felt a cold satisfaction. Karma. But another part of her, the part that had learned from Leo and the factory workers, felt a profound, aching sadness. The waste. The diner door opened, and a young couple, laughing and shaking snow from their hats, bumped into her. "Sorry, lady." The noise made Julian look up from his coffee. He saw her. His eyes widened. His entire body went rigid. He didn't see Ava Chen, the VP. He saw the waitress, the ghost of his failure. Ava held his gaze. She didn't move. Julian stared at her, his face a mask of terror, shame, and a desperate, unspoken plea. He looked down at his chipped mug, then back at her. Slowly, almost involuntarily, he did something she never thought she would see. He nodded. It wasn't a bow. It wasn't a greeting. It was a concession, a sign of surrender, a quiet acknowledgement of her power and his defeat. Ava watched him for a moment longer. Then she gave a single, brief nod in return. It was not forgiveness. It was not pity. It was just closure. She turned and continued walking into the snow, leaving the ghost of Julian Davenport behind in the flickering neon light. The next morning, Ava was in the boardroom on the top floor of the Shentech Hamilton Tower. The storm had passed. The city was covered in a pristine blanket of white. She was leading a meeting with her new American executive team. "The numbers for Q4 are excellent," she said, "but I'm concerned about our employee retention in the hospitality sector." "Leo, what are you hearing from the floor?" Leo, now distinguished in a sharp suit, spoke up. "They're happy, Ms. Chen, but they're worried about the new automation protocols. They're worried their scenery that can be replaced by a computer." Ava looked around the table. "Then we need to be clear. Technology is a tool, not a replacement. Our greatest asset is not our software. It's our people. The human touch is the one thing that cannot be automated. Our strategy will be to invest more in our people, not less. We will build a service academy. We will promote from within. We will make it clear that at Shentech, no one is invisible." After the meeting, Arthur Hamilton caught her by the window. "That was brilliant, Ava. No one is invisible. That's a great tagline." "It's not a tagline, Arthur," she said, looking down at the bustling city. "It's a business model." You heard about Julian, didn't you?" he asked quietly. Ava was silent. He's homeless, I think," Arthur said, shifting uncomfortably. "Bounces around shelters. I tried to. I sent him some money, anonymously. But he's broken. It's a terrible thing." Ava turned from the window. "It is a terrible thing, Arthur. But he didn't start breaking when he lost his money. He was broken when he had it. He just didn't know it." She picked up her briefcase. "The car is waiting. We have a flight to Shanghai. My father is announcing his retirement." "He's... what?" Arthur was stunned. "Is he sick?" "No," Ava smiled. "He says he's satisfied. He's appointing a new CEO to head the entire global operation. My God, Ava. Who is it? Ava pressed the elevator button. He believes in a leader who understands the company from the ground up. Someone who has, touched the market. Arthur's eyes widened as he understood. Ava, congratulations. That's incredible. The elevator doors opened. Ava stepped inside. It's just the beginning, Arthur, she said. We have cities to build. The doors closed, reflecting the New York skyline in their polished steel. Ava Chen had started her American journey as an invisible waitress. Now, she owned the reflection. She hadn't just beaten the arrogant billionaire. She had built a better world on the ashes of his, one built not on arrogance and ego, but on the one currency that never, ever fails. Respect. They say karma isn't a lightning bolt, it's a mirror. Julian Davenport looked at Ava Chen and saw a nobody, because that's what he was on the inside. A hollow man, propped up by money and a famous name. Ava looked back at him and saw the truth. She didn't just get revenge, she got justice. She proved that true power isn't about how loud you can yell, but about how strong your character is. Julian's mistake wasn't just his bigotry, it was his assumption that the person serving him had nothing to teach him. He learned, far too late, that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. What did you think of Ava's response? Was Julian's fate deserved, or was it too harsh? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single